Good morning, iPad and Mac team. What do we have in store for the final Apple event of the year?
Good morning, Tim. The iPad mini team has a new chip ready to go.
Wow. That's wonderful. And what about the iPad Air team? Good morning, Tim. We have a new chip ready to go. Okay, and what about the Mac team? Morning, Tim. We have a new chip ready to go. Okay, does anyone have anything other than a new chip? Like, do we have any new product designs? Well, you know, Tim, I was actually thinking we could add USB-C to AirPods Max since we've switched it to AirPods Pro already, and then more people could be incentivized to upgrade our higher-end pair of headphones. No. We have to get rid of some of our lightning connectors we still have in stock. So I guess if it's just chip upgrades, let's just site refresh. Sounds good. Okay, let's begin. So yeah, typically end of year, October-ish timeframe is when we get a lot of new iPads and Macs. So when asking if Apple's done for the year, I regret to announce that there's not much other than new chip upgrades rumored, and if it's anything like last year, that should mean site refreshes and not an actual keynote-like presentation that they send out invites for. Nothing's impossible though. I will acknowledge, you know, like they might still want to have an event even if it is a boring one. And last year it almost felt like they kind of had one. It was just pre-recorded. They didn't send out invites for it, but there were little 20-minute snippets that they dropped and filmed it just like it was a typical event, but they were able to launch it whenever they felt like it. You didn't have to have YouTubers all flying out just to pick up and hold an iPad that looks exactly the same as the last one. So nothing's impossible at this point, but I do think if it's mostly chip upgrades, we're probably not getting a keynote, but there definitely could be some newsroom posts. And starting with the iPad mini for the first time in 2 years, yes, it's rumored to finally get a refresh, but not a design change really of any kind. There's no rumors suggesting they're gonna change anything with the display or the Jellygate problems you guys have, or upgrade even the USB-C port. Everything's gonna stay the same, except it just gets a new chip. And currently it has an A15, and because I think it's probably too soon to come out with an A17 non-pro, or, you know, put a 3nm chip in a $500 iPad, they're probably just gonna give it the A16. It's the same chip that's in the entry-level iPhone 15. Still great, still fast, but yeah, they'll just throw a new chip in there, maybe some new Wi-Fi connectivity, and call it a day. And according to 9to5Max reports as well, there's already a new budget iPad ready to launch, the iPad 11th generation, which in my opinion is completely unnecessary. Like, it's kind of weird because the iPad 10th gen that shipped last year is still $450, and then they kept the iPad 9 around with its lightning connector. Now would be a good time to kill the iPad 9 since Apple has confirmed with AirPods and the new iPhones that USB-C is happening. They are transitioning to that. Prepare themselves for the EU and just get rid of the lightning iPad. If I were Apple, I would just discount the iPad 10, maybe get it a little bit under $400 and come out with a USB-C Apple Pencil, you know? Like, if they can't bring Apple Pencil 2 connectivity to all the iPads, then just come out with a cheaper Apple Pencil that is EU approved with that Type-C connector, and then just let that continue to be your budget iPad, because the rumors for the iPad 11 are not about any kind of design upgrade or even an improvement on the USB-C port. It's literally just a chip upgrade, and there's already an A14 chip in there, so I think the budget iPad would probably just get an A15 chip, and then, okay, it's a little bit faster now, we call it a day, but who knows what Apple has in mind. Maybe they're gonna keep the iPad 9 around until the European Union bans it because it's just probably so cheap to make. But the more interesting update in regards to the iPad line comes from 9to5Max sources detailing that, yes, there's a chip upgrade plan for the regular iPad Air. Nothing big here. There's no OLED display, no redesign, or I wish I could even say they were planning on moving the camera to the longer side, but that's not even been rumored. And because it already has an M1 chip, they'll probably just throw an M2 chip in there. But the more interesting part is 9to5Max says Apple is working on a larger size variant of the iPad Air, which the more I think about it, the more sense that makes. Like with the iPhone 15 and 14 line, we have the Pros that get bigger options, and then now the regulars, like the 14 Plus and the 15 Plus have, you know, entry-level specs, but better battery life and a big screen. And now this year, we got that same treatment with the MacBook lineup. So the MacBook Pro has the bigger size option, but now the 15-inch MacBook Air is like not a Pro, but still a bigger screen with a better battery life. So why shouldn't then the iPad line get that same treatment? Because if you're out there wanting to buy an iPad for whatever reason and you just need the biggest screen possible, you're stuck with $1,100 as the entry-level price. And a lot of people who are buying those big iPads probably don't care or need mini LED or 120 Hz or a dual camera system with LiDAR in the back and Thunderbolt. In fact, I've run into into a lot of situations where I'm at a restaurant or at a local business, and they oftentimes will use those big old iPads as their cash registers. And they've got these dual cameras and LiDAR on the back and, you know, that high refresh rate display that I'm sure they don't care about. They just wanted a big touchscreen, so they all were spending, you know, $1,100 a pop. So if you're not using the iPad for any kind of work because it's running iPadOS, I'm done ranting on that, by the way. That ship has sailed. I'm just gonna accept that iPadOS is never gonna be what I want it to be. But if you're just buying big touchscreens for your business or for media consumption and that kind of thing, why not offer a 12.9-inch iPad Air that's at a lower price, that's maybe 800 or 900 bucks. Save yourself some money by not going for a Pro model. It could still have Touch ID instead of Face ID, and yeah, I could actually see that being a decently popular option. The iPhone line's doing it, the MacBook line's doing it, with an M2 chip as well. Still overkill for an iPad, but if the iPhone's getting a non-Pro big size and the MacBook's getting the same thing, why not bring it to the iPad? So we could see that before the end of the year. Not a strict timeline on that, but I believe 9 to 5 Mac, this sounds like a realistic report that I could see Apple actually offering. And while there have been some rumors for an M3 iPad Pro with an OLED display, those are not rumored to be ready by the end of this year, so we'll probably have to wait till maybe Dub or a spring event next year before we actually see those. But as far as the Mac line goes, we know Apple's been playing around and experimenting with the manufacturing of M3 chips, which will be the first M series chip with a 3nm architecture, likely supporting ray tracing, just like the A17 Pro, which is the biggest thing to happen to Apple in gaming since Halo on the Mac, which was supposed to happen, actually. That's a true story. Look it up. But because Apple just refreshed the MacBook Air with the larger size option a couple of months ago, at this point, the M3 chip is not rumored to be coming to the MacBook Air before the end of the year. There has been a lot of talk about Apple finally refreshing the 24-inch iMac, though, which is the only desktop they still sell with the M1 chip. Even the cheaper Mac Mini got the M2, and the 24-inch iMac is just ugly and farting around on the website and hasn't been touched in several years now. So my prediction, and a bit of speculation on my part, is that because the M3 chip is probably a bit more expensive to manufacture, they're gonna put it in the 24-inch iMac first because that's kind of a higher margin product, and maybe even put it in the MacBook Pro with the Touch Bar, and those are gonna be the first Macs that actually get the M3 chip because they have active cooling systems, and because this 3nm architecture, at least with the A17 Pro, has been known to run a little bit hotter because it's pulling more watts, they're probably gonna wanna go a little bit careful with the launch of the M3 and just launch it with computers that have fans in them. 24-inch iMac hasn't been updated in so long, so I feel like that would be an easy win. Apple, for some reason, when they first unveiled that iMac, were bragging about how great it is at gaming. But can you imagine if that colorful, ugly iMac is actually the first one to get ray tracing support and it actually becomes like decent at playing a lot of console level games with the whole PS5 controller support and all that? And I don't know, in years prior, I've always critiqued the Touch Bar MacBook Pro because I felt like, okay, there's no reason to buy this older Mac when there's a cheaper MacBook Air available that is better in so many ways and usually more affordable. And in the case of the M1 and M2 chip, having that dedicated fan, in my opinion, didn't result in that much noticeable of a difference. But maybe if they start shipping that Touch Bar MacBook with an M3 chip, then I could justify, okay, this actually has a leg up on the MacBook Air models. And that might actually be a Mac I would consider reviewing later in the year because I haven't even looked or interacted with a Touch Bar in several years. I still miss it on my current MacBook Pro, and if that thing got a 3nm chip in it, the performance for the money might actually not be that bad. So I could start to justify its existence a little bit more if they gave it some more chip exclusives. But as you can tell, all of the rumors for the remainder of the year are mostly coming down to chip upgrades. Digitimes mentioned some more efficient displays coming to the higher-end MacBook Pros, but I don't believe them. I don't think they would do a refresh that small. They're probably just going to wait until the M3 Pro and M3 Max chips are ready to ship on the new MacBooks, and then they'll update the displays. But what other things would you guys like to see from Apple before the end of the year? Do you still think they should do a keynote in a presentation, even if it's just chip upgrades? All that good stuff. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you all in the next one.